Now, would you believe me if I said every man can live a fulfilling life? God's word is clear. Every man can live a fulfilling life if his life is built on the right foundation. And if we're honest with ourselves, I think we would all agree that everyone has a foundation for their life. I mean, if we're not building our lives on a faith foundation, then we're more than likely building it on something. It could be money, pleasure, power, maybe fame. As wrestlers and coaches, it's very easy to get sucked into the trap of building our lives on success and medals, championships, and accolades. And the problem with building our lives on a foundation of things like success, money, pleasure, power, or fame is that it ultimately leads to living a life that is out of balance. Now, when we are out of balance, we fall, we collapse, and then destruction can start to take place. But with faith as our foundation, we will begin to build a balanced life. We've all heard it said before that a man's faith needs to be solid as a rock. A man who builds his life on solid rock will prosper and weather adversity. But a man who builds his life on sand will collapse when the storms of life strike. In the book of Matthew, there's an account of Jesus sharing the parable of the wise and foolish builder. He uses building a house as a metaphor for building life, and it's a metaphor I think most men can relate to. Matthew 7 verses 24 through 27 says this, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash." This parable of the wise and foolish builder takes us back to this tension between information and transformation. And in this parable, we can assume that both builders had the same information. However, it's only the wise builder that experiences transformation. And the crazy part in all of this is that both houses look great until the storm comes. Men, we need to be wise builders who build our lives on solid rock. A solid rock foundation is built when we hear Jesus' teaching and we put it into practice. Gentlemen, it's easy to look around at many of our peers and think, wow, his life looks fantastic. But more than likely, he thinks the same about your life. And that's the thing. Both lives, both houses, they look great. But Jesus assures us that only one house, one life will stand in the midst of the storm. When we build our lives with Jesus as the foundation, we have the most solid foundation to fall back on when crisis hits. We want to encourage all men to be like the wise builder because the storms will come. I once had a mentor share with me, as men, we are either in a storm, coming out of a storm, or we're about to head into a storm. And that's why building a solid foundation is so critical.